Hello and welcome to Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. My name is Ben and with me is...
Gabriel.
Wasn't a single good choice in this movie because this week we watched Van Helsing. 2004's Van Helsing. I think it's kind of worth mentioning. This was a Jim pick. Jim, I defy you to synopsize this film.
Before I do that, I just need to give you some props because Ben watched this movie twice, right? Twice.
The second time, it was definitely like a second screen experience, but yeah, definitely twice.
It took us a little while to record, which we'll talk about, later in the podcast. But, Ben watched it very soon after our previous film, and then it took me a while longer to get there and to make it work. So his dedication, even though this is the way he feels about the movie, he went back and he watched it again so that it was, fresh in his mind for you. So I'm like, we gotta call that out as some good work, okay? But look,
thank you, Jim.
This synopsis is not quite going to do the film justice, but
Impossible.
We'll do it justice when we talk about it. So, monster hunter Gabriel Van Helsing is sent to Transylvania to stop Count Dracula, who is using Frankenstein's monster and also werewolves in a scheme to create his undead offspring, which also involves his three brides. Teaming up with the fierce Anna Valerius, who is also a not very good vampire hunter, Van Helsing faces vampires, werewolves, and his own dark past in a kind of gothic, action-packed battle between good and evil. This is Van Helsing.
One factual error: there is no good in this film. All right, let's run through the facts and stats, and then we'll get into this movie because I have things to say, and I'm sure you do too. Released in 2004, we've returned. We're back. Directed by Stephen Sommers, screenplay by Stephen Sommers.
Can I just say, I think this will be the last time we're going to return to that well for a while. For a while now.
Challenge accepted. Based on a novel by... based on the novels of Mary Shelley, Bram Stoker, and George Wagner's, with Frankenstein, Dracula, and the Wolfman, respectively.
Although I would say the Wolfman, not a novel.
No, but it's his creation.
Yeah, it was the film. So so George. I don't know if it's Wagner or Wagner. You never know.
I feel like it's Wagner. Yeah. Wagner's.
It's like there's two G's there, but anyway, he was the director. But I will stop interrupting you. Continue.
All right. Cinematography by Alan Daview. I want to point out something. He is by far the most accredited and talented person in this film. He did cinematography for The Color Purple, E.T. the Extraterrestrial, and Empire of the Sun. The man's been nominated for 5 Academy Awards, and he did the cinematography for this movie. Whoa! Okay, starring Hugh Jackman, Kate Beckinsale, Richard Roxburgh, David Wenham, Will Kemp, Kevin J. O'Connor, Shula Hensley, and Tom Fisher. I mentioned Tom Fisher because he will be brought up. He plays The Undertaker. Music by Alan Silvestri, collaborator with Stephen Sommers, as we've discovered, also fantastic composer of cinema music. Budget of 160 to 170 million. Box office, domestic 120 million, international 179 million, with a worldwide gross of $300,157,638 and a total running time of, and I can't believe it's not longer, 131 minutes. I stopped this movie halfway through and I'm like, wow, we're heading to the climax. This must be it. Incorrect. We were halfway. This movie is long and it feels longer.
So what did you think? Hit us with your thoughts.
Second time I watched this movie, I wrote some notes. 3 Australian Three amazing Australian actors in this film, all not at their best.
Wow.
Richard Roxburgh's, oh no, what was his name? Sorry. Is
Yeah.
it Richard? Richard Roxburgh's Dracula. And look, I love him. I think he is an amazing actor. It could be, and I haven't seen them all, so I cannot qualify this. It could be the worst Dracula committed to film.
Big call.
It's so weirdly camp. I think it's deliberate. It's a deliberate choice, or at least deliberate direction. It's so camp when everything around him is not really that camp, except for his wives or brides.
I'm just gonna say that I could never say this is the worst Dracula committed to film, because it is also the most interesting thing about this entire movie, right?
You're correct. Yeah.
That performance and what he's doing moment to moment, I'm always watching it. I'm like, what is happening? What is happening? And my eyes are wide and I'm excited because I'm just like, the choices, the moment where he slow dances with himself while walking in a circle, I'm like, that someone thought of that. Probably you, the actor. Do you know what I mean? And you went, this is what I'm gonna do right now. And I just I'm not actually making fun of it. I'm literally just going, it's so magnetic to watch. Now, that said, I'm also not saying, hey, this is the greatest cinema ever. All I'm saying is this is intensely watchable. And every time he is on screen, he is doing something that commands your attention, right? He's crouched low. He's hanging off the ceiling. He's, hugging someone unusually. Like, he's just doing all of this stuff. And, I find it fascinating and I love watching it. It's one of the reasons I enjoy rewatching this movie, just for these choices. Just as you say, choice fest.
Choices
galore. Choice.
And it is a completely legitimate way to see it. Like, I get it. Like, I've watched it twice. Like, it is wildly kind of just erratic, and as I said, just full of every scene he's making choices, and they're different choices. It's not consistent. It's all over. The wig is wild. The wigs in this movie deserve their own mention. Both, I think all three of the Aussies are maybe wearing wigs in this film. Wenham maybe not. Here, let me just finish this. I wrote, don't vampires make other vampires by biting them? Is Van Helsing an angel? Star Wars ending? Wasted Kevin J. O'Connor, and vampire lore is all over the place, which I'm sure we'll bring up multiple times. Lore, L-O-R-E.
Look, I just, you're making me like this movie more with your talk of it, because I'm going, that's right, but at the same time,
this movie has all the ingredients for you. Sorry. Like, it is weirdly gadgety, and the aesthetic and the kind of the tone and the theme and the kind of like, he's a vampire hunter for the Vatican. Like, it just screams Jim. And then he's using these saw blades that modern day tradesmen would love them. Like, they would love these things. They're amazing. And look, I'm tangenting here for some comedic effect. This movie has a following, and it has a following for good reason. It is in that category of bad, it's good. And there'll be a lot of people who really enjoy kind of watching it. Like, I don't know how heavy Van Helsing is, but he's heavier than a cow.
Yeah.
Because she tries to lift him and really can't, and then next scene throws a cow across a village at him. Like, he's a solid dude. Like, there's a wonderful, inconsistent logic to this film.
It's when I look at, and we've really, dived in on this aspect, when I look at the script, the screenplay, the performances, what is happening, the aesthetic and the production design, that is where my fascination and my glee really kicks in for this movie. You know, when I just sort of say, we're doing James Bond. We're doing James Bond in this part of the movie, you know, and then somewhere over here we're doing an homage to classic Universal monster movies. And then Richard Roxburgh is off in the corner disappearing into a frozen mirror while he screams into the void. And I'm like,
he freezes himself in carbonite multiple times this film.
You know, and then I'm like, and then there's these strange, you know, steampunk creatures who are working for Dracula and riding mechanical the Jawas, basically. They're riding mechanical scooters across the sky. And I'm just like, this is the kind of movie that I, you know, to do a throwback, right? You pull the DVD out of the case, someone comes over and you're like, we're going to watch this. We're going to do this. And they're like, I haven't seen it. And you're like, oh, you're in for a ride, right? You put it in the player and you just watch their reaction to it. Because I loved what you said before, Choice Fest. It's not just Richard Roxburgh.
No.
Everything about the direction of this movie is Choice Fest. That is a choice. Oh, there's a choice happening there. There's another crazy choice happening there. You know, at the start of this movie, it begins with him hunting down and killing Jekyll and Hyde in Notre Dame Cathedral. And Hyde is like chewing a cigar, then eating a cigar, then he's doing saw blades through the belt. Like, it just is so wacky. This movie could also be called Swing Fest because he swings on a wire four
it's Gothic
times.
Tarzan.
It's Gothic Tarzan. He swings on a wire 4 times in this movie. And the swings that they do are kilometers long. Kilometers long. They grab the cable and then they are basically swinging from country to country with the arc of these, you know, swings that they're doing. And look, it's funny. When I saw this movie at the cinema, I hated it. I really hated it.
Rightly so.
I did not enjoy this movie. And it's something that the glee came later. The glee absolutely came later. And it came after I had something of an appreciation for Stephen Sommers. And I have genuine love for the Mummy movies, 1 and 2.
We both do.
I don't talk about 3, but 1 and 2, which is Stephen Sommers movies. This is definitely not that. Those movies, I would say, are really good, particularly the first one. But I'd say they're both quite good, and I don't think there's anything to sort of there's not a guilty pleasure in watching those movies. Whereas this one, it's like, look, I can say it's insane. I can say it's fun. I can say I want to show it to someone and watch their reaction, but I cannot, in good conscience, say to anybody, this movie is good. You know?
If this movie had a blimp or dirigible in it, is it a 10 out of 10?
There's so much stuff that I like, and then there's also just so much stuff that endlessly frustrates me about this movie as well. And
I would like to mention, I don't think Stephen Sommers, just like another famous creator of vampire fiction, has ever read a vampire book or consumed maybe vampire fiction before. I'm alluding the other person is the creator of Twilight, because the mirrors towards the end of this film. At the start,
I like it. I like it.
At the start, you can see them in the mirrors. From the long shots, they're in the reflections, right? And then they're not. Why do their clothes disappear? Why? I'm so confused.
Not that I can overlook that. What I've said when I like the mirrors, I like the lore, L-O-R-E, mechanics that they did there, where it's like, maybe to Dracula, it's not a mirror. Maybe it's a doorway. I'm like, that's actually kind of a cool idea. I like that. I like that expansion. And I would argue back. I think Stephen Sommers knows all of these monster movies incredibly well, and he has deliberately decided to mess with all of them. Now, has he messed with it in a way that, does defy logic? Yeah, it's kind of what he does. I'm fine with that. If this movie hung together a bit better in terms of performances and chemistry between the cast, and look, we've got to talk about the fact that this was really the last time that Universal would trust Stephen Sommers with a large budget, because every instinct that he has when it comes to action and visual effects, I should say every instinct that I don't particularly like when it comes to action and visual effects, he indulges in this movie. The Vampire Brides in particular, they decided to use a mixture of techniques, and ironically they did it in an attempt to make this more realistic, but by using some CGI and some actors in suits and compositing the two together, and then doing CGI takeovers for all except parts of the actress, you ended up with a real mess here where, in a weird way, for 2004 technology, it actually would have been less distracting if it was just full CGI. And I hardly ever say that, but this is
Yeah.
Stephen Sommers trying stuff, and the lighting doesn't work. They can't match it properly. They're trying to fly through darkened skies, but they look incredibly translucent, and it could be daylight, it could be nighttime. There's a lot going on that just doesn't work. And then you combine that with the fact that he loves to rely on some CGI, and it happens all the time here. Dracula's castle is a ridiculous, ridiculous
Yeah.
location in scale, size, and simply it looks a lot like what you would do. If you're on the computer and you're in Photoshop and you're like, this castle must be 8 times bigger, and you pull the slider and you increase the scale
Yep.
of it to beyond
Like he
human
just grabbed the
proportions.
corner of the JPEG and went
Exactly.
like
He
that.
just grabbed it and he just ripped it all the way up and said, it's now 8 times bigger. Now, I'm being a little bit glib here, but that is sort of what it feels like. And that's really what I'm trying to articulate with regard to the things I didn't like so much. And because there's so much of that in the movie, it definitely distracts for me, from what I usually like, which is action, pulp, adventure, because Van Helsing is also this odd intersection whereby this is an adventure movie, but for some reason they've decided to wrap it in gothic horror tropes. Yeah, there's monsters, but look, the monsters at the end of this movie in particular reminded me mostly of Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Yeah.
It's literally find your animality. And they
Lousy.
both just, one turns into a giant werewolf, one turns into a giant bat-like creature, and they just fight each other, and it's not even the actors anymore, which is exactly what happens at the end of Mortal Kombat Annihilation. And it didn't work particularly well then, pretty much 10 years before this movie came
Well,
out.
the thing is too, like the CG final battle he did in The Mummy Returns before this, and it didn't go the greatest, and he's repeated it times 2 in this film.
I should
With
say, compared to that though,
much
this
better,
looks far
much better.
better.
But in my brain, like when I'm, it also happened in Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah.
When the final climax is almost completely computer generated, I don't know why I'm watching a movie in that circumstance sometimes when the whole rest of it's been live action, obviously, and mixtures, right?
But when
Like
the
it kind of
characters
loses something for me.
Yeah, when the characters turn into monsters and are computer generated, you definitely lose the human touch, the
Yeah.
expressions behind the eyes, and it becomes much more like literally a cartoon at that particular point in time. But yeah, so there's definitely stuff that frustrates me about the movie. I think as well, look, I love Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman is in some of my favorite movies of all time, and I actually do think he's quite charismatic in this movie. But one thing that always just leaves me questioning, and I want to know more. I want to know about the direction. I want to know about the instruction. I want to know about the intent. Is his accent in this movie?
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. Hugh Jackman can do a convincing American accent. Hugh Jackman can do a convincing English accent. In this movie, he does both. And he swaps from one to the other, sometimes within the same scene. And I'm going, you can do both of these. This must have been a deliberate choice, but I don't know why someone instructed you to make it or you decided to make it. And I want to know because it's driving me nuts.
If you think about it too, the character should either be Eastern European or Italian, like based on what we know of him in this film. And I should say, there's a reason we don't know a lot about his character by the end of this film, in that they were expecting this to be a franchise.
This was going to go.
They wanted this movie to be huge. But here's where, strangely enough, I think they made their mistake. This is the Avengers. This is every monster in this movie. Where did he go next after this movie? He beat Thanos.
Yeah.
he teamed up with the Wolfman. He had his transformation. There was a revelation about who he was. And it is basically said he is the fallen Archangel Gabriel.
Yes, it is functionally said, but it is not really pulled. That thread is not really pulled out or explained, right. And
that he was the reason Dracula was Dracula and things like that, right? It's such a weird. From what we know of this done successfully, this feels like a third film, or a fourth film. Like it should have been him versus the Wolfman, him versus Frankenstein. Jekyll and Hyde gets away, and then in the fourth movie, he finishes off Jekyll and Hyde and then goes into his Thanos moment with Dracula. Yeah, they really wanted this to be something cool. And look, here's the deal. It could have been really cool. Mm-hmm. Like there are ideas here that are enjoyable. There are ideas here that tickle the brain. There are mysteries here that, if fleshed out and done correctly, would have been really, really fun. Really fun. 30 minutes less and maybe a slightly smaller budget to start with and maybe build into what we got. But yeah, man. Like,
it's also one of those movies whereby we talked so much when we talked about the Mummy movies, the first two, about the chemistry between the two leads, you know? And this is one of those situations where I'm like, look, I really like Hugh Jackman. I really like Kate Beckinsale. I don't particularly like them together. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't seen this movie, because this movie, the few quieter scenes that they have together, and I'm like, there is not chemistry radiating off the screen. There are two leads who know what they are supposed to do with this material, but it doesn't quite translate into chemistry and a bond that we as the audience can go, oh, I'm watching these two fall for each other and go on an adventure. And I'm supposed to be feeling that, and I don't. So
I also wrote a note that I haven't mentioned yet. And I predicted your favorite part of the film. 6-horse jump across the chasm.
Actually, I do quite like that sequence. I'll just say I do quite. It's not my favorite part of the film, though. I'm going to class this up a little bit, and you'll be surprised and hopefully proud of my favorite moment of the film. My favorite moment of the film is the black and white prologue. I think that is super fun. And you mentioned Tom Fisher, who plays the Undertaker in this movie, and the prologue has him in full flight as one of the angry village mob. I just really liked that prologue because that prologue was a great combination of new ideas, silly ideas, homage to the classic Universal monster movies. And I actually think, on a more minor note, that by putting it in black and white, they managed to hide a lot of the CGI nonsense that plagues the rest of the movie, it doesn't look half as bad when you put it in black and
No.
white.
And like Frankenstein's introduced there, and we actually don't get to see a lot of him in total until towards the end of the film, and he doesn't look great when he's in his full glory.
Do you mean Frankenstein's monster?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
You are correct. The monster that was made by Frankenstein. And look, it's deliberate. Like, they've made him more steampunky than like pure cadavery monster. And they've gone with the classic of like, he's a good dude. But yeah, like the green and all that sort of stuff. But that also brings me to the central driving plot point of this film. And that is Dracula's goal. Dracula's goal in this movie is to hatch his bride's eggs. But he can't hatch vampire eggs because vampires are dead and they give birth to dead young. So they're using the Frankenstein's resurrection science to bring them to life. This is the main crux of vampire lore that annoys me in this film. Because quite clearly, there are a lot of vampires in this world, which means they've created vampires before this by biting people. The eggs are completely unnecessary. Why is he so obsessed with his own progeny when even throughout this film he mentions he has no emotions, he has no connections, he has no love and all that sort of stuff for this? His goals make no sense. Also illogical. If he did create all these vampires and the thousands that seem to pop out, he would quickly overpopulate the world, eat their supply of food, and then they would die out of hunger.
Yeah, and that is really the largest of all the logic jumps. This is definitely the largest one because, and there's actually that they're even so bold as to allude to it in the movie. I think one of my least favorite moments is when, Hugh Jackman, love him, sells it quite fine, as much as you possibly can, but they're walking amongst these disgusting egg sac things, and he's like, oh, vampire egg sacs. Well, I guess they are dead. It makes sense they'd give birth to dead things. And I'm like, it does not make sense. It doesn't. That doesn't make any sense. Why would that be a thing? Like, it just doesn't make any sense in terms of the way these so-called creatures would work. So but also, yes, they actually explicitly say in the movie as well, oh, Dracula and his brides only take 1 or 2 people a month. These things would take so many more. And then yet halfway through the movie he says, this is my summer palace, everyone here's a vampire, there's hundreds of them, man. Like, I'm like, well, I think that all of
Budapest
those
is in trouble.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like, so it's that's more than 1 or 2 a month, I think, so it's just like, but again, I don't particularly care about all of that because at the end of the day, that's not why I don't like this movie. It is fairly glaring in the sense that, okay, the mechanics of what he wants, why he wants it, and how it's all going to take place don't make a lick of sense, but there are other problems with regard to certain sections of it dragging and it just not quite being super enjoyable, because the thing is, you would look past all of that if you were having a good time. It's your mummy rules, right? You'd just look past it if you were enjoying yourself all of the time. And in this film, I enjoy myself some of the time. I wouldn't say I dislike everything, but some of it I've got a smirk on my face. Some of it I'm just can't believe it exists at all in any form and that we got it. And then there are other bits that I do genuinely go, I kind of like that. I kind of think that's fun, that as a choice.
Yeah. This movie should have been about 30 minutes shorter. And like, there's plenty of material that you could re-edit this film into something that is just as coherent, and that's not a compliment, but just as coherent and probably more enjoyable because your brain would have less time to kind of try and fill in those gaps. I've brought him up a couple of times, and that's because since rewatching The Mummy recently, I love his work so much, and that's Kevin J. O'Connor. And they were very much trying to recapture that in this film.
I love him in this movie.
I can't get past the facial prosthetics for some reason.
Yeah, it doesn't
They
help.
do. Like if they'd just gone his normal look and made him a bit hunchy, and movementy, I think that would have gone a lot better, because his face is so important to what he does.
Can I
Like
just
as
pause
far
you
as
there and say I love that you said movementy, and I think all film directors should adopt that, right? When they're directing people
look,
and they're like, you
his
know what,
moving.
Meryl Streep, okay, here's the thing. You're doing a great job, but I just need you to be more movementy, okay? Because if
I
you
need
can...
you more movementy in the mise en scène, please.
Yeah. I'm sure, Meryl would just love that direction, Be more
I
movementy.
think if my direction came from an honest and innocent place, she would definitely accept it and take it on board for what it was.
I feel like that's a jibe at me for calling you out for saying movementy.
Not at all. No. Um,
Continue.
yeah, I just think his face is so important to what he did in The Mummy, for example, and having that in this would have elevated his character, which I did enjoy as well. I think a bit even further. I've had a look around to see kind of what he's been doing, and kind of what he has been into, and all that sort of stuff. And I don't think he's done much since what have we got? Like 2020, I think was his last like film role. He's done some TV bits and pieces. I just think he's fantastic, and I want to see him in more stuff. And like the more Sommers that we watch, the more I feel like he's just trying to recapture the Mummy. He's just trying to get that again. He is a man full of amazing ideas, and the Mummy paid off, and it worked so well. And it's just kind of been a bit of that diminishing returns. The ideas are still there, man, all the way through. Like even G.I. Joe, ideas are there. It's just like he's always trying to put too much in, whether it's a visual effect, whether it's story, whether it's a twist. There's always just that little bit of cram in there from kind of the Mummy Returns onwards. But I don't know much more to say about this film. Like, you should watch it if you haven't seen it, is what I'll say. Like, I've ragged on this movie quite a lot. But look how much I've been able to say about it. Look how much I've been able to talk about this movie. This movie, if you're interested in films, even if you're like, it's not my sort of film, but if you're interested in genre, like watching this film, it sparks your brain in a way, even if it's to criticize or to critique is a better word, maybe not criticize. It got my juices flowing. It got me thinking about movies and it was a really good pick of a film. I was dreading it when you picked it, but it was a good pick of a film, even though I do not like this movie.
Yeah. Look, for Richard Roxburgh's performance alone and just
Yeah.
going, what are you doing from moment to moment? And it's delightful and crazy. And I love it. So, look, this was exactly what I hoped we would get out of this conversation, because honestly, this is not a movie I can rewatch very often either. I don't think it hangs together particularly well. This is a movie that is really best watched in a crowd, and like I said, showing someone who's never seen it and watching their kind of disbelief that this happened and this got made. And again, it's a combination of emotions. It's not just so bad it's good, we're laughing at the movie. We're going, this is this crazy, oddball, creative, weird thing that doesn't quite work, but had a huge amount of money assigned to it. And now that we're fairly far removed from it, 20 years, we go, wasn't that a fascinating slice of cinema history? And how great is it that it exists and we can talk about it and it's still there for us to enjoy,
Because it, based on budget, it definitely made its money. But I remember the marketing for this film, and the marketing was huge. So it probably, if it did make money, didn't make a lot.
My take on that, looking at the numbers there, is I think when you account for marketing, when you look at the global returns and the fact that they don't actually get 100% of the box
No.
office gross, I'd say we were skirting break even and
Yeah.
hovering somewhere around there. So it's not difficult to see why Universal said we needed this to be a giant hit, not a break even kind of moment in our company's history, you know. So I get why we didn't get more, and in a way, I kind of like that we didn't get more. It doesn't quite work, so I don't know if I wanted 12 of these, you know. So, but I'm glad.
I want 12 of these as they wanted them to be.
Yeah.
Like, as they thought they would be, sorry. Like, I would, if this was, this is, again, and look, it's just a different era of entertainment. But if this was conceived of today, it wouldn't be a film.
Mm,
It would be a streaming series. It would
yes.
be a mystery, action, gothic TV series where Van Helsing, Monster of the Week kind of thing, develop a story. Maybe only 12 episodes, maybe a short kind of streaming thing, but that's what it would be today because there are so many ideas jam-packed into this that if given time to be their own thing, we probably would have had a better product in the end. But again, you said you probably won't watch this again. I'm normally that guy.
I'll
No,
watch it
no.
again.
Recently, you won't.
I was gonna say I own this movie, Ben, so
Yeah.
I'll watch it again.
But this movie does give me the vibe of if it caught me on the right day, I would enjoy it.
Yeah.
If it caught me in the right day with the right people, you're right, a group of people watching this film. Like the perfect combo for me is like maybe 2 or 3 people who've seen the film and maybe 2 people who haven't watching it together.
Yeah.
Because you get this kind of joint experience of like, oh, I know what's coming next. And you just get to watch the other people.
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's my take on Van Helsing. And I think that's our take on Stephen Sommers.
Yeah. Look, I'm happy to call it done. Why don't you tell the good people of the interwebs where they can find the rest of our takes on Stephen Sommers, as well as several other 70 plus movies at this point in time?
We've watched a lot of movies. It's been 2 years,
Something like that.
Bit years. And we've got a whole back catalogue out there. And we see that people do go watch them. We see the little numbers tick up every once in a while as you kind of find a movie you like and maybe spread to another one. So check them out at Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes, just with Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures. If you do find us and you do like what you hear and you do dive into our back catalogue a bit, leave a comment. Tell us why you love this movie. Tell us why you don't like this movie. Tell us why it's so bad it's good. We'd love to hear from you. And look, and if you're committed enough to leave a comment, you know what the extra step you could take is? You could press a little button that says subscribe, because then you get more from us. We'll explain it a little bit later. We're going to be changing our release schedule slightly, but that is just because we live lives and we do this for the love of it. And you know what? Sometimes we need to spread things out a little bit.
Yeah, so we've been on a weekly cadence for quite some time now. And look, we do know that there are some of you who watch or listen to us regularly because we talk to you in the comments and we see the same names and we're like, hey, thanks for joining again. So if you are someone who's used to watching us weekly, we're stepping back to fortnightly for a little while. We will return back to weekly again. It's not like it's going to be a forever thing, but if you're one of those people who are actually looking for our next release, don't worry, but it's just going to stagger back to a fortnightly for the next little while, and then we will return to weekly at some point in the not too distant future, to take a line from X-Men.
Not the greatest line of X-Men either. And if you want to follow us on any sort of social media, there are 2 places you can do so. Jim_and_Ben for our Instagram, and Jim and Ben's Movie Adventures on our TikTok. Now, it is my responsibility to choose our next viewing adventure. I almost chose 1989's Catch Me If You Can, Stephen Sommers' first directorial debut. I almost chose 2013's Odd Thomas, Stephen Sommers' last film.
Okay.
I didn't choose a Stephen Sommers film.
I'm glad. I know I did the latest one, but I'm done now for a while. Like I just,
I'm going to another influential director, a director we haven't watched any of their films of yet, a man who has definitely shaped through multiple films my idea of good cinema. A man who has hopped genres. He's been from historical epics to sci-fi to technologically defining cinema to documentaries even. We're watching a James Cameron film.
Okay.
And we're starting with maybe my favorite film, Terminator 2.
I was gonna say, it's like it's gotta be Terminator 2, right?
Terminator 2 is my favorite James Cameron film. And look, it is, gonna throw it out there, more violent than we've watched in the past, but good cinema is good cinema. And I'm looking forward to discussing it with you and looking to see how our audience feels about it as well.
Well, thank you. Heading back to, I want to say 1992 or something like that for Terminator 2 Judgment Day, So, did I get it? 91. Oh, close,
So close.
close.
So close.
Look, thanks for that pick, and we will see you next time. Until then.
Bye.